listening to Overwatch League Daily, your daily source for Overwatch League news, scores, and more. Here's your host, KickedTripod.
Good morning, Overwatch League fans. This is your Overwatch League Daily episode for March 27th, 2018. Today, I sat down with Overwatch League analysts Volamel and Yiska to discuss the Stage 2 playoffs. But first, we've got some news. First is that there's going to be no shows this week besides the first two interviews, and I think there's a pretty good reason for it. We're putting together the final pieces for a new show, Overwatch Contenders Daily, which will be hosted by Lemon Kiwi, and it's going to follow a similar format to Overwatch League Daily, just about contenders. We're in the process of solidifying a logo, scheduling guests, and putting together the audio and video formats. So if you're a Contenders fan, it's going to be amazing. We don't even have the logo up yet, but if you want to get an early head start on Twitter, you can follow it at OWC Daily Show. Kongdu Panthera Flex Tank Void has been transferred from Kongdu Panthera to the LA Gladiators. It is yet to be announced when he will be joining the team. And the LA Valiant have signed former Mosaic esports coach Stoop to their coaching roster. His responsibilities will include acting as the head coach of the Valiant secondary roster, which includes leading scrims, VOD reviews, and overall player development. He will also assist the rest of the LA Valiant coaching staff in strategy development and player scouting. That's it for the news. Let's go to the scoreboard, brought to you by patreon.com/OWL Daily Show. The Stage 2 playoffs have come and gone. The Philadelphia Fusion pulled off a nail-biter of an upset against the London Spitfire 3-2, and in the grand finals, the Fusion got out to an early 2-0 lead at halftime. However, NYXL would turn it around in the second half, complete the reverse sweep, and reign as the Stage 2 champions. Here's part one of my conversation with Volamel and Yiska about the Stage 2 playoffs. So the stage finals is in the books, and man, Stage 2 is great. I think across the board, it was a lot of fun to watch. With me, I'm joined by Volamel and Yiska, two of my favorite guests. I must say, don't tell anybody else that, though, naturally. It's a secret. But thank you guys for being here and joining me. Let's just jump right in and talk. We saw two games. We saw the Fusion and the Spitfire first. And for those who haven't caught up yet, it was a pretty surprising result with the Fusion winning 3-2. Before the series, we talked about this a little bit on the show. The Fusion had an 0-8 map score against London. The first map I really want to discuss, though, is Nepal. And Volamel, I'm going to toss this one to you first. How did the Fusion take this map? Because they're a team that hasn't taken a map against London, and they're a team that has like a 15% win rate on Nepal.
So obviously Control is split up between two sub-maps, and Philly actually was able to close it out within two sub-maps, which I thought was really interesting, especially, coming from those statistics, looking at, this is probably their worst matchup in terms of just map differential, where like their Control match was just abysmal. Like they just did not do very well against Control, but they really turned it around in terms of just being able to pressure the backline. I think Badosin just did not have, a great game, especially on Control. Carpe was just to be able to find him time after time. And that really kind of sold me on Shrine, especially the first sub map. He found him a lot. He was able to pressure the backline without much of a threat coming from Prophet, because Prophet's style is very, similar in that sense, where he's not really countering and matching the Tracer. So he's able to just sit and just, we're trading backlines in that sense. And when you have someone stepping up like Boombox did in that series, I think that he definitely, Carpe especially, had a great time just running amok in the London backline. And then we go to Village, and London decided to play some sort of weird triple tank Reaper composition, which let Carpe again just kind of free cast and just run around completely unchecked. Surprisingly enough, it was actually quite easy, it seemed like, for them to kind of run around, but it did feel like that the supportive backline for Philly actually stepped up and played more to their potential than I think they have shown in the regular season.
Yeah. One thing I found very peculiar about this performance by London Spitfire was usually they're even overzealous in hiding their hand, right? In these playoff series. Like they were playing frontline tank bus, like this soldier dive, basically. Instead of Genji, you play the soldier. The same thing against Dallas. And there it worked, right? And I think what London thought was, we're just going to exploit Fraggy and Poco to an extent, because you know you can only save him so much, and then you can't use your matrix for yourself. So
yeah,
but that never really worked out whatsoever. Like Carpe was just a different beast in that series. Like that was some unreal carry potential. Like numbers we've hardly ever seen in Overwatch big games. If you're being honest, the only thing that comes to mind for me was actually Profit against
season 4.
Season 4, exactly, in that final where he went off. But Carpe had a nut series. And then they almost felt a little bit lost, it felt like. And the nice thing about this entire series is that they played, not the entire series, but especially Nepal, is that they played Nepal the exact same submap for the first time around they met in the regular season. And there they had Shadowburn instead of Echo, right? So that, for me, completely changed the entire dynamic of that match around, right? So they try to play frontline bust, it doesn't work. Like Carpe is too much of a beast. So they switched to this weird, I think it was triple tank, and then first with Reaper,
and then they swapped like Junkrat, I think.
Exactly, yeah. And then there was a moment on Village where it's like they try to bust the tank, but they survive with like 100 HP. But there's no speed boost to be found. They are already in the backline. They just kite them out. So Bertring's like, I actually can't finish anyone off. And we don't have finish off potential because we don't have a Tracer or a Genji at this point. So he's like, okay, let's play the same comp, but I'm on Junkrat. And for some reason, Poco is a beast at shutting that down. Like, if you look at the final moments of that map, Bertring has a tire, and he sits on top, and they have 2 support ultimates. There's no way to lose that fight, actually. But Poco just isolates him and kills him solo before he can even use the tire, and they just seal the map based on that.
It's interesting that you break down especially Village, because that was one of the ones that I was really kind of questioning, you know, like why exactly would you just kind of throw a curveball in, you know, your map down in terms of just control. Something that really kind of was interesting to me when it came to Village in particular was that last play where Prophet kind of sneaks around the back line and goes for the pulse bomb on Boombox, but they knew that he was flanking from the kind of double mega side, and he instantly just gets picked from Echo, and it just opens him up for a Dragon Blade and just finishes the map. And then, you know, coming to what Yiska was saying about with Village, it didn't even look close. It felt like it was fairly decisive in terms of what Philly was able to pull off, and, you know, hats off to Carpe.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about EQO because Yiska, you brought this up, and it was a great point. We saw London versus Fusion earlier in stage 2, and it was a 4-0 in favor of London. But Shadowburn was in, EQO was out. He wasn't feeling well that week. Yiska, how impactful to you was his performance in this series, EQO's performance overall?
I think generally, like the match becomes a lot less predictable if EQO is in there, because he seems to have maybe a little bit more awareness of what's happening. Because if you ask any Overwatch League player, the thing that's super annoying about Prophet is that he comes from somewhere you don't expect him to be, and then a gesture is also there and just finishes off your backline, right? In that series, it almost felt like you've literally never seen Prophet being so dismantled in a series like this one. Like, that was bottom of the barrel for Prophet's performances ever. I can't even remember a series where he was less impactful. It seemed like, okay, so the thing is that Gesture and Prophet are a nightmare to Zenz, right? But in that series, it's like Echo turns around, just triple dings Prophet, and you just win the fight off of that. like just the awareness and sort of like the feel that you need to support your backline, and then also doing it sort of really impactfully. And then in contrast, in the first series, especially, I think it was it on? No, it was actually on Shrine. Shadowburn had really bad ult usage. Like he was basically running around, really not catching anything. And the most impactful thing for me was that back then, London was still running the Genji Tracer dive with Profit on Genji and Bertring on Tracer. And even if Shadowburn was able to ult into a non-ult, a support ult London, where you think now he should have the impact, and he usually does, either one of two things would happen: very good peel, or Profit would just blade his blade and always out-duel him. And that was the easiest game for them because of that. That was just not possible with Echo. And while I'm not sure if that's a fair representation of the overall level that we saw also from Shadowburn over the season, in that specific matchup, I think Echo is by far better suited to play London.
Definitely. I think that some of the big factors that I think that, a lot of people have gone on and talked about, especially with Echo, is that he actually does really well with Fraggy. He kind of activates them, and he feels like there's a little bit more synergy there between them and their dives. And, there's multiple reports coming out that he actually has quite a large vocal presence within that team. So if you're adding, a shot calling presence in the DPS role, along with Fraggy, Carpe can follow up off of that. You're really lining up for a very, oddly enough, GC boost on S dive scenario where they can just jump in and really target someone out. And it's kind of what they did with Bedosen in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So what about Snillo? We saw Snillo come in, and I made an image called Snilladelphia, which is just his face photoshopped on the Rocky statue, because it was a really, at least it looked like a very impressive performance from Snillo on Route 66. You put Snillo on Tracer, Carpe got to flex onto the Widowmaker, which when you saw that, when people saw that substitution and saw that line, and we all saw our Twitter timelines, it's like, what are they doing? Why don't they want to win this? Blah, blah, blah. Ended up really paying off for them. Volamel, how do you think that Snillo overall performed? Did he perform well? Should we see him on more maps in the future?
I think just to kind of break down that question into two separate questions. Yes, I think that Snillo definitely performed. When given, he kind of elevated Carpe so that he could, free reign and do what he needed to do. That's the kind of idea that I think that Philly's operating with Snillo, that having another, ace Tracer player come in, it kind of frees Carpe up to do other things, to play the Widow, to play even a soldier if he needs to. And that kind of leads into the second half, where I do think you'll see Snillo more, but I think it's going to be solely on maps that they need Carpe to be able to play other things, whether it be the Widow, whether it be, maybe even a Sombra or maybe even the Soldier, something like that, or maybe Reaper coming into the next PGR. Who knows? We should see more Snillo, but I think it's going to be peppered in between the other three. Obviously, you're going to have Eco, Shadowburn, and then Snillo, but you should probably see Carpe majority of the time. I think that's like the star of the team for the most part in terms of DPS. So yes, but not as much as maybe a lot of people are hoping for.
Yeah. So do you guys think then that the EQO and Snillo experiment in stage 2 has overall been successful for the Fusion? I mean, it's hard to argue results wise. Obviously, they went to the stage finals, but even just from a theory perspective, are you overall happy with seeing these different looks from the Fusion?
Definitely. Yiska, what you think?
Yeah, I think Fusion is actually the only team that really makes DPS carries work. So if we're talking about Winston's lab statistics, right, we have the percentage team kill model. And that means how much kill share does a team get between their different lines. So DPS line, tank line, and support line, right? Fusion has by far and away the most PTK share on DPS. Why? Because Carpe is an absolute beast. Low-key was absolutely underhyped this stage, right? So you add that to that, EQO, now Snillo, and I honestly don't think Shadowburn has run his course whatsoever. He's still like a top Genji, right? So just in general, how they make that work, and to no one's surprise, the lowest PTK share in that team have the tanks, right? Like the Pokebombs can only do so much if you're basically having the sacrificial fraggy everywhere. Support line is surprisingly high for having such a high DPS share too. But what it just means is that they have found a way to utilize their DPS in a way that is very atypical, and we have only really seen in the past from, funnily enough, Kong to Panthera, right? Every other successful team in the history of Overwatch was carried by tank and support lines. Lunatic High, right? Like Miro, Zumba, and then obviously Jaehong, Toby, right? Then you had even Envious to an extent, right? Like you can always argue about the tank line in Dallas, but during the time when they won Apex, Coco and Mickey were absolutely the top of the line, right? And their backline definitely was. Chips was considered maybe one of the best, or like on par maybe with Jaehong. So like, and now to see like a team make it so far with their DPS being the leading force is very interesting. But it also really, it is so reminiscent of KDP's run, isn't it? Like you see them beating all these monster teams, and then they come just this short of making it, right? Like DPS carries are just a tiny little less reliable, and you can't expect Carpe to pop off in a 10 match series like he did against London, right? I think that there was also some fatigue going in. But overall, and then if we're coming back to the topic of Snillo, I think, and that is an interesting question, by the way, to a coach of Philadelphia, right? Was that planned? Like we all want to know, or is that just like, okay, we gotta keep copy on Widow? Like Scrims off. Everything you knew about Scrims doesn't matter anymore. We've now unlocked Widow 2.0. We do need a tracer, right? Just bring in Snillo. And that guy performed really well, right, in that position. Obviously, they get a lot of space also through Carpe's pressure. But let's be honest, being put in that situation at that age is pretty sweet.
I gotta say that either way, when it comes to like that question that you want to pose to the Philly coaching staff, like I feel like just sticking with the plan is something that I think that people don't accredit enough to the coaches, that you have a plan, you're going to stick to it no matter what. And then B, like even on the inverse, if you flip it 180 and you say, you know what, we're going to throw in some a curveball that maybe we haven't practiced yet, but I can see that Carpe is playing out of his gourd. Let's just go with Snillo and try to make this work. I think that either way, I think the Philly coaching staff definitely should be credited with that win.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. That win was the most Korean win I've ever seen, because that was a series of the craziest curveballs you've ever seen. Like from bringing in like an 18-year-old youngster that has ever played like 3 maps for you, to having the wildest strategy and countering also the strategies you saw the other team play. And then just from team's play style, like sometimes, okay, we just conceded first death. Every other team in Overwatch League is now waiting for the respawn. They pull slightly back and suddenly come out like busting, and Profit's like, this is nothing I've ever seen anyone play Overwatch like. I don't know how to read this. Gesture had its moments, but had its moments in certain maps, but it was like they couldn't read the game whatsoever. Yeah. It was just a completely different beat. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. And it's especially because when you look at the Fusion and you look at especially their hero pick rates, I think you can look at their strategies and see how they've prepared for different teams. But when you look at their hero picks, Fusion don't change that stuff. They really don't change that stuff at all. When I was looking at some of their hero pick rates on Nepal, I believe 5 of the 4 or 5 of the heroes had 100% pick rate on the on that map. And so it's they're very predictable in that. And so it was really interesting to start to see, triple tank on Nepal bringing in, and Snillo, he plays on Route 66 for them multiple times. So that wasn't like a huge surprise. But at the same time, people kind of considered it a gamble bringing in a player who only is so warm, right? You only can warm up so much, playing, in your.
That's what it takes to win championships, though,
Totally. So this is going to conclude. I want to conclude part 1 of part 2, or of 2 parts of this. Let's just make it 2 episodes of this. So Volamel Yiska, thank you guys so much for joining me for part 1. We're going to jump into part 2 in just a second. Make sure to follow Volamel on Twitter at Volamel and Yiska at Yiska out. Anything else I'm missing for you guys here?
No. Thanks for having us on. I don't want to speak for Yiska, obviously, but thank you for having me.
Can. Basically married.
But at this point.
Thanks, guys. My thanks to Volamel and Yiska for stopping by. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at Volamel and at Yiska out. Tomorrow, I'll have part 2 of the interview where we talk about the NYXL versus Philadelphia Fusion Grand Finals. If you like the show, make sure to follow, subscribe, like everywhere that you watch or listen to the show. And of course, you can watch or listen to the show on the front page of winstonslab.com. Lots of links to lots of different places like our Discord and Patreon and everything else. Go to overwatchleaguedaily.com for links to all of those things. And of course, you can send me an email at overwatchleaguedaily@gmail.com if you have any comments or questions about the show. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with part 2 of my interview with Yiska and Volamel.